was probably a bad choice. If you have any questions related to it, please, yeah.
Do you have any special tips? I think I know what the answer is going to be. But for dealing with people who've maybe been vegan, I use the term loosely, but people who've been active vegan in the past but have gone back.
So be non-vegan.
Yeah, is it still just keep the question?
I mean, it's so hard, you know, there seems to be this trend, but it's not really a trend, is it? But there seems to be like a situation where some people go plant-based. I use the word plant-based because I think, you know, once you go vegan, you don't ever go back, right? Because you get people that go plant-based for health, and then, you know, it's kind of like, I guess, dieting in the sense of, you know, you do something because it's good for you, but, you know, you kind of don't stick at it or whatever, and you go back, and veganism wasn't for me or whatever. And I think it's about exploring why these people go back and just helping them understand. And, you know, if it's a health thing and they go, well, you know, I want not a health thing. What is it? Tell me a bit more specific.
I haven't got my head quite around it yet, but he said he doesn't agree with the moral arguments of veganism. And I try and have a conversation with him, and I just can't see the point, and I haven't got time right now. To fully go there to get to the bottom of what he's getting at.
I mean, I guess that's the kind of crux of it is to really address it. You have to get to the crux of why it's the case, and you've got to try and help him understand, well, what is it about the moral argument you don't agree with? I mean, that's because there's 101 different reasons that people can use, and what frustrates me often about non-vegans is it's kind of like, it's like a game of bingo, I suppose, where it's just like continuously one after the other until they get one. You know, that's the thing. Right? They can go through 100 excuses, right? Some of the most farcical things. And if they give you one excuse that you don't know how to respond to, but they think they've won. And it's like, well, I mean, if I get 99 of them, and you know, come on, please give me a break. And this is the problem: is they're just trying to hold on to one thing, but it kind of erases the whole bigger pictures. And so I've never come across someone who's gone back for a moral reason. That sounds slightly disturbing. This is what I believe, okay? So I believe that there's a couple of expressions, okay? And the first one is a little bit strange, you have to bear with me, but it's the idea of a low-hanging fruit tree. You might have heard this before. Low-hanging fruit tree. So the idea is, if you've not heard this before, is you have a tree, and apple tree is easiest. So we have an apple tree next to us, and you know, on the apple tree, there's different stages of ripe apples. You know, they're not all ripe at the same time. They're always coming through at different times. And so what you have on an apple tree is you have some apples that are very ripe. You know, they're good to go, juicy. Let's take them. And then you've got some that are just kind of like they're just forming at the moment, and you can't pick them. And so the idea is that you go for the low-hanging fruit first, because that is the ones that are greatest to pluck. Sometimes they're just on the floor and you can pick them up and they're good to go. Sometimes you've got to pull them a little bit. So these are the people, these apples are the people who are closest to getting it. Like, they're on the point, they're pretty much there. They just need, like, you know, a conversation or like a video or a documentary, and it pushes them over the edge and they fall from the tree. And so you go for the low-hanging fruit first because they're easier. And over time, as what happens with all trees, is that all the fruit will eventually ripen. And the ones that might now think, well, how the hell is that ever going to grow into an apple? It will one day grow into an apple. So always focus on low-hanging fruit. The next one's more kind of pertinent to, I think, to what you're describing. And I think that humans are a lot like sheep. I don't mean that in a bad way, because I love sheep so dearly, but in the sense that we like to be part of a flock, right? We like to feel included. We like to feel like we're part of something, but also we can be led. We can be easily led. And what we have currently, and what we've had for so long, is, you know, the idea that veganism is a fringe movement. It's a bit weird. It's not part of society. It's not mainstream. You know, you have to not be part of, you know, the generic thinking to be vegan. But what we're seeing now is a slight change in that, and that's that actually, well, anyone can be vegan. You know, you can have doctors can be vegan, lawyers can be vegan. You know, it's not just about, you know, teenagers. You know, the stereotypical activists look who are vegan. It's not about that anymore. Mothers can be vegan, daughters can be vegan, brothers and sisters and fathers and whoever. Anyone can be vegan. And everyone is, you know, everyone from different walks of life is now vegan. And so it's no longer like a fringe thing, it's becoming more mainstream. And what's so beautiful about that is it entices more people to try it, because it's no longer like you're stepping out of a flock and you stood in your field on your own. You're just kind of entering into a different flock. And so as more people go vegan, more people will go vegan because more people are going vegan. Right? How great is that? And so I think that anyone, right, who even right now is like, I don't want to hear it. I disagree with every argument, the environment, the health, the human rights, the ethical arguments, right? Whatever argument it is, over time, they'll change as well. And they might not change because they agree, but they'll change because everyone else is doing it, and they don't want to be on their own anymore, because we don't want to be on our own. We don't want to feel like we're ostracized or we're not part of something that's inclusive. You know, like I said during the talk, we're tribal creatures. We have to feel like we're a part of something. And fear of being ostracized or no longer a part of it is often what drives us to just conform to what everyone else is doing. And for for all of us, we conform to a certain sense to feel part or integrated into the society. That's a very healthy thing. There's nothing wrong with conforming to fit into the mainstream if that's a healthy mainstream that we're conforming to. Nothing too wrong with that. But at the same time, what that means works in our advantage is that we're conforming, people will conform to veganism because it's becoming the mainstream ideological, if you like, way of thinking. So for people who go back now, we'll see them again. And we'll welcome them in with open arms, and we'll say, told you so, So sometimes it just takes a little bit longer for certain people to stand on the right side of history, but I don't mean this to sound, too idealistic, but anyone has the capacity to change, and anyone can change, and sometimes I receive messages from hunters, and in fact, this guy came to the march on Saturday, and his whole family came, and he's like, my dad used to be a hunter. He came to the march, he's turned my mum vegan, the whole family's vegan now, and this is from like a family of hunters. So anyone can change, anyone has the capacity to change, and we just sometimes gotta believe in it. But I know it's hard, and it doesn't actually really help your personal situation. It's probably like a bit fluff, but at the same time, I promise you that dig deep, find out what his moral argument is, because as we all know, all of us, there's no argument against veganism that actually has any substantiability. Well, not from a moral perspective anyway.
He says he's got an objective morals, whereas I'm subjective.
No, it's the opposite.
That's what I thought.
No,
this is
that's the
why I'm
opposite.
very confused. I need some time to get what he's coming from.
That's it. Yeah, that's a complete subversion of the truth.
Because animals don't have the same cognitive capacity as we do, therefore we can't judge them as equal like vegan food.
Right. Well,
I think I still don't see why that's an argument. Why?
I'm sure there's plenty of people that are more intelligent than him cognitively as well. I love people. Sometimes people use these arguments. It goes, animals aren't always intelligent. I'm like, well, does that mean that your life is less worthy than someone who's more intelligent? He goes, well, it's different because I'm human. It's always different, isn't it? But what I think this sometimes feels like it can be selling out, and I don't believe that it is. I'm going to explain why. Sometimes people say to me, no, I just don't believe that animals are the same as humans. Not the same, because animals aren't the same. I don't believe that life of an animal is equal to the life of a human. And I sometimes say this, and I'll explain why I say it. And I sometimes say, well, okay, that's fine. You don't have to view the life of an animal as being equal to the life of a human. All you have to do is value the life of an animal as being higher than the taste pleasure that you get from consuming them. Because that's a slightly easier thing for people to recognise. And the reason I say this is because when I first went vegan, I didn't believe the life of a non-human animal, a non-human person was equal to my life. And I went vegan because I realised it was wrong. And it's not because I thought, oh, well, they have the same rights to life as I do. I just objectively knew that it was wrong. Excuse me. But over time, the longer I was vegan, I was like, what the hell am I talking about? Stop being so selfish, stop being so egoic. Of course, their right to life is the same as yours. I'll give you an example. When I first went vegan, I was vegan. And I came across the whole, shouldn't we use the word Holocaust to describe what's happening to animals? And I remember saying, that is disgusting, that is so offensive. How dare we use these words to assign to what's happening to animals? This isn't okay. And then over time I was like, well, objectively, it's not about comparisons, it's not about comparing, it's just an objective, standalone, it is what it is, we can't deny what it is. And so if he's saying, well, I don't believe the life of a non-human person is equal to my life, just say, well, do you think the life of a non-human person is greater than your taste buds? And if he says yes, then that's all he has to say to believe that veganism is the moral, ethical
I
standpoint.
think he's got nutrition doubts, so therefore, as we, there's arguments that we need some meat, therefore we are entitled to the thing is where it's going.
Well, the nutrition stuff is frustrating because we've won the nutrition argument. We won it so long ago, the science has done its out, but there's this thing called merchants of doubt, and it basically means that it doesn't matter how much evidence you have on your side, it only takes one person to put one seed of doubt in there to throw the whole thing. It happens in climate change all the time. 99.9% of scientists, climate scientists, say climate change is real. But it only takes one person to be vocal about it for people to be like, oh, is it real? Because people want to be told what they want to hear. And for most people want to be told that eating meat is healthy. So it only takes one person with one bogus. There's something in the Daily Mail yesterday, I think it was, of course, in the Daily Mail, but yesterday it was like, eating steak and cheese is good for your heart. And it's just like, but that's all people need to hear, because then they hear it and they're like, okay, great. And the study was talking about actually you have to eat it with greens and legumes and stuff. but that's not beside the point. It just takes one thing to turn people. So for every piece of science that suggests what he's saying, there's 10 pieces of evidence that show what we say is correct. And so if sometimes just find out what he doesn't think, send him something to refute that, he'll give you something else. It's just a process of elimination, I guess. But don't lose hope. Sometimes it takes time. And if all this fails, then
I'll keep going.
we'll keep working. Any other questions? Please, yeah.
Could you tell us a bit more about your van and
Oh, yeah.
Land and Glory, and also what you do in schools?
Yeah, of course, that's a nice question. So last year, well, I alluded to this at the right beginning of my speech. I said, that doesn't happen here in England, that doesn't happen in the UK. What the bad stuff's only in America or Australia, but we've got it really good. This was something we were doing a lot of Earthlings experience events and outreach events, and by we I mean Lou and I, my partner. We were doing a lot of events, and often this was an argument that people would say to us. They would say, well, I agree, this is bad. This is only in America. And a lot of the footage that we'd show and kind of give people was often American footage. But we all knew that it happened here just the same way, and so we decided, well, we should do something about this. And so we decided that we'd make not like a long documentary, but like a short, kind of like 45-minute documentary that basically exposed UK animal farming and showed what happens to animals in the UK from birth to death. And so first things first, we went through and got all the footage we could to see what kind of narrative we could kind of create. What bits do we have? Is there anything we need to get? And anything we needed to get, we went and shot as much of it as we could. And so we formulated some sort of narrative piece about the birth to death of land animals. One of the things that we're most disappointed about is that there's no fish in the film, and the reason for that is there's no fish footage in the UK. And the problem with fish is that a lot of the fish footage that you find even in the New Dominion film doesn't have the same power as the footage, and that's very much a human-centric thing, because fish are so different to us, and their suffering isn't often as painfully apparent because they can't scream and express a pain in the same ways excuse me, as pigs and cows do. But anyway, that's beside the point. So anyway, we put together this documentary. It's called Land of Hope and Glory. We released it last year, August 1st last year, so nearly 13 months ago. And so we wanted to do something else with it. And one thing that it's kind of funny, one thing we always say we want to do is how great would it be if we could take it to universities and stuff, and then we were given the opportunity to do so because we would kindly donate the van, the van that we drive around, the big vegan activism van. And so we got it wrapped and with graphics about veganism, so statistics and stuff like that, and pictures. And so we thought, well, okay, great, let's go to universities, and let's take the film and screen it to students and talk to them about it. But we also did some other stuff. We did on-campus outreach using virtual reality headsets, which you've not tried. If you haven't tried, they're amazing, so good. Done by a group called Animal Equality, and they're just astounding. And that's what we did. So we traveled. We've done, at this point today, we've done around a third of UK universities, which is about 40. Screening the documentary, I do a talk afterwards about being vegan, and then there's a Q&A and stuff like that, and it's amazing. And we give out free vegan pizza afterwards, like a little seal the deal kind of thing. So, and we didn't tell them it was gonna. We got some strange reactions, I guess, because, well, not strange, I guess quite logical, because we didn't advertise it as being come watch this film full of graphic content about animals, and we'll give you free pizza. No, it wasn't like that. We were we tried to make it kind of edgy, it was come watch this undercover documentary and you get free food, free pizza. And so people would come along not having a clue what it is that we're showing them, and I would introduce the film and be like, hey everyone, surprise! Just Luna's locking the doors. But no, and then people would watch it, and then we'd have. But it was quite good because we kind of got a little bit of a reputation in the sense that the British Medical Research Council, which is the big vivisection council in the UK, well, they condone vivisection, sent emails out to universities saying that there were extremists travelling around coming to. And there was something else that happened as well. I can't remember. There's a few things like that. But anyway, what was I even saying? What was I going with that? It was good. We enjoyed it. It was great. And what was that?
Are you still doing it?
So we're going to go to universities still. It won't be as intense. We did this for 7 months this year. It lasted from October 15th to the end of April. I think October 15th was the first time we did it. So we won't be doing it as intensively as that because we've got other things we need to do. However, we still will go to some universities and do similar things. We've got other ideas. We'll screen the documentary, but we've got other ideas for other stuff we'd like to do as well. So yeah, a little bit, not as intensively as we were, but still a little bit. And the van's here actually. Well, not right here, but it's in. Where is the van? Okay, Okay, there's someone, Kevin, who's here with the band, but the band's here as well, so it'll be outside if you want to see it, I think. But yeah, we'll be driving around it. We still drive around and go to varying places and do different bits and pieces.
And is that something that you organise, or do people get in touch with you if they want in their town and everywhere?
Yeah, you alluded to something here. Excellent. So I'll give you an email, and if you email that, we can try to arrange something. Which university is it?
CU Coventry. So that's
Okay, great.
free in Coventry. So
Perfect, free in Coventry, that sounds good. Okay, cool. Well, then that would be amazing. We'd love to set something up there. Cool. Excellent. Please.
I want to know about Natasha Bannister.
Oh, yeah.
Now, are you still in touch with her? So that was
Absolutely not, no.
What was she meant to do now?
I don't know. When did I last see her? So we're at school together. I don't think we went to college together. So last time I saw her, I was 16, I think. You know, I should probably look for her on Facebook, to be honest, shouldn't I?
You should, and you should film the reunion and the conversation.
Yeah.
And her memory back then.
I should look for her, shouldn't I? I mean, she was veggie right up until the point that we didn't know each other, so she could have gone vegan by now.
Definitely.
I shouldn't I?
Yeah.
I'll have to have a look. I don't know why I haven't, really. Hello. Yes, yeah.
Tag her in this video.
Oh, God. Please don't do that.
Great talking.
Thanks, Ray. Thanks for listening.
One thing I was going to ask is, what's the most difficult argument you have to replace that you find? I mean, when I do activism, I have a range of arguments coming at you, and then some of them you cope with fairly easily, some of them sort of push your boundaries a bit. The one that I find difficult is the religious beliefs argument. So I don't know you personally, but how do you deal with the religious beliefs one? And what do you find the most challenging argument to deal with?
That's a great question, actually. I'll start with the religion thing, because that is one of the hardest ones. I think one of the reasons that religion is so difficult is that you've got, when dealing with veganism, you have that social indoctrination, okay, part one, social indoctrination, but you also have, on top of that, religious indoctrination. And the thing about religious indoctrination is it's not society tells me it's okay. It's literally the creator of all life tells me it's okay, right? And so, as me myself, just a mere mortal, when I try and express them, and I'm literally arguing against what they believe to be the word of God, you know, like what credibility or veracity do I have in that argument? Because you know it's not looking good for me from the offset, and so that's one of the reasons I think it's so difficult. But another thing is we can get bogged down in religious texts, and I try to stay clear from religious texts because we all know that there's passages in the Bible and indeed in the Quran and the Torah and probably any religious text that advocates for veganism. But the problem with religious texts, and this isn't no way a criticism of religion. If anyone's religious, they won't criticize religion. But the problem is, it's the religious texts themselves are pretty much subjective in the sense that you can read whatever you want to read from them, and that's why people condone homophobia in the Bible, or they condone slavery, you know, in the Quran or whatever, because you can pretty much read whatever you want into these books, and that's why you have 101 different interpretations, different sects from different from different religions, because it's kind of a canvas of interpretation, and people use that to their advantage. And so I try not to get bogged down too much in the passages of text, because for every one that we have that proves that veganism is what God wants, they probably have one or two that proves that it's kind of maybe not what he cares about so much. Especially, you know, with Jesus feeding the 5,000 with fish and bread or whatever he did. And so instead I try and keep it a bit more simple than that. And I think what everyone will agree on is, well, everyone will agree on is that all the religions preach pretty much the same thing, which is a peace, you know, tolerance, you know, compassion, you know, primarily, you know, God, he is ruthless and such, but he is also loving, and he wishes for salvation for all of life, and so he wants us to pass on into the afterlife, you know, to meet him and his home, and wherever he resides, and so that's what we all fundamentally agree on, is that the God that everyone talks about is a good person, not a person, a good deity who has a pure heart, and so I think that's where we go down this road. And I think it's also important that we don't deny certain things like halal slaughter is a really interesting thing, right? Interesting in the sense that when halal slaughter was created, it was definitely the most humane method of slaughter there would have been. Let's go back 2,000 years ago to when Muhammad was first, you know, using halal slaughter. Well, yes, that would have been the most humane way for an animal in the way that he does it. And so I think it's sometimes important to acknowledge and say, well, you know, when Jesus and Muhammad or any of the prophets were around, it was a very different world, and Jesus couldn't pop down to Tesco's and get a wicked sandwich, like that wasn't the world that he lived in. So his situation was very different, and we all agree that the morality of what happened 2,000 years ago is very different to the morality of today. And we all agree that what happens, there are many moments in the Bible, the Quran, or the Torah, which are very violent in nature, and things that we wouldn't accept today, human sacrifice or whatever, terrible, terrible things that happen in these religious texts, they wouldn't be acceptable in today's society, right? And so we've all agreed that what happens in the Bible, and the Quran, and the Torah, whatever religious text, doesn't necessarily translate to modern day morality. And so back when Jesus and Muhammad were around, they often, we can say this, I think, they killed out of necessity, and so they weren't necessarily bad people because they had to do it to survive. However, our society has changed so much that if we believe that God is benevolent and compassionate, which we of course believe he is, then would we not believe that actually a benevolent and compassionate God would rather we did with his creatures if we didn't have to? Because to kill his creatures when we don't have to is an act of cruelty which goes against any notion of benevolence or compassion. But I was in Texas recently, and as you can imagine, I had the Christianity used a lot to justify killing animals in Texas because it's such a hard-earned belief, both killing animals and Christianity so solidified there. And we're at a rodeo protest, and this was one of the most intense things I've ever done. And I was having this long conversation with this rodeo goer, and obviously it got to religion. And then this guy's dad came over, big guy, used to do the rodeo himself. Now his son does it, and he stood in front of me, and he looked like a bit like a nightclub bouncer, like had that kind of spec, and he just really good posture, but also very intimidating. And so I kind of looked at him and I was like, okay, right, how am I going to play this? And so I was like, I've just been chatting to your son, and your son and I have been talking about religion, and I was just telling your son how God, probably doesn't agree with what we're doing to animals because he's compassionate and benevolent. I said, do you agree that everything that God's done is perfect? And he said, of course, everything God does is perfect. And I said, so God, every creature that God's created is absolutely as He would want them to be. So of course, God doesn't make mistakes. I'm so glad he said that. God doesn't make mistakes. I said, well, think about all the animals that we kill, right? The chickens, pigs, cows, whatever animal. We change these creatures, right? So let's think about chickens, broiler chickens, the meat chickens. So they reach slow age in 6 weeks. Dairy cows produce 10 times more milk than they would naturally. Lambs are being bred to produce excessive amounts of wool and also have 2 children when they should only have three children when they should only ever have 1 or 2. Pigs are being modified and they're forced to be impregnated. So we basically tampered with all of these animals. And I said, well, hang on a second. If God created these animals to be perfect, then are we not defying God? Because we're taking the creature that He created, which you yourself said are perfect, and we're saying they're not good enough. We're saying you did all right, God, but no, you didn't do quite right. It's like we're going to have to take what you've created and change it because it's just not good enough for us, And I said, well, aren't we in essence playing God in that situation? And because we are creating life that wouldn't exist if it wasn't for us, we're playing God. And so I think God's offended by what we do to animals because we're saying that He didn't do a very good job and that He isn't perfect and the creatures He created aren't perfect because they weren't good enough for us and that we actually we need more than He can provide. And